9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Hey everyone, and welcome to this edition of Sports Talk Florida and the Bucs Reports pregame show. I'm Jim Limbs, your host. With me very soon will be James Kennedy, Big Game James, along with our buddy Chris King. And we've got guys at the stadium. We've got all kinds of stuff going on for you today. It'll be the Buccaneers and the Green Bay Packers. This has been kind of an interesting situation. We've got two of the premier quarterbacks in the country. In, of course, Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady. The situation, though, however, is a game today where it's not as much about the quarterbacks. It's more about which team can run the ball better, which team can basically play better defense, because both the Buccaneers and the Packers are without their key receiving core. So this is one of those bizarre games where the highlight guys are Rodgers and Brady, but they're not necessarily the top of the storylines. So while we're waiting for our buddies to show up, let's check in on the scoreboard. As we said before, this is a 4:25 game, so there's some games going on. Let's go check out the scoreboard. All right, let's begin with the Saints and the Panthers. Saints 13, Panthers nothing. Meanwhile, the Bears are besting the Texans by a score of 20-17. It's the Chiefs 17, the Colts 10. It's the Bills and the Dolphins tied in that game. Tua is knocked out of that game, at least for the present time. They're in the third quarter there at 7:37. Meanwhile, the Vikings are trailing the Lions by a score of 17-14. The Ravens are one up on the Pats, 21-20. As they are 8:33 into the third quarter. Also in the third quarter, just starting the third quarter, Bengals and Jets. Bengals on top of the Jets by a score of 20-9. You got the Raiders and the Titans. That one, the Titans 24, the Raiders 13. You got the Commanders and the Eagles. You got the Eagles way up. Fly, Eagle, fly. The Eagles are flying past the Commanders at this point, 24-0. And then got our upcoming games, of course, the Jaguars and the Chargers, the Rams and the Cardinals, the Falcons and the Seahawks, of course, the Buccaneers and the Panthers, and the night game tonight, 49ers, Broncos, and Monday night, it's the Cowboys and the Giants. So there's your scoreboard for right now. And as I said before, we got Big Game James and we got our buddy Chris King coming on. So, gentlemen, let me bring you into the show. James, how are you? Chris, how are you guys?
Very good. How's it going?
It's going okay. And Chris, you okay?
Yeah, glad to be here, Jim.
Buffalo's tied with the Dolphins at the moment. So I was wondering if you were on some sort of calming down ritual that you were doing. It's a little too close.
Well, I mean, you have to figure they're playing minus 37 of their starters. The way it seems like when you've got nobody from your starting secondary playing, the fact that they've kept Miami in check is shows you the depth of this team.
Yeah, and Tua got hurt.
Yeah, he's back.
Okay.
How you cleared the concussion protocol in like 10 minutes is beyond me. James, you would know more about that from playing in the league. Are you surprised that he got in and out of it that quickly?
Yeah, but I mean, honestly, it had to show that he wasn't showing really significant signs. The scary part about it is, some of those signs, things could be delayed and they show up tomorrow. Is it worth the risk? I don't know. Think about it. We didn't even really have a super full-fledged concussion protocol back when I played. It was like, you okay? Your bell just got rung a little bit. You okay? Get back in there.
So what your position coach would come up and hold up 3 fingers and say, how many fingers do I have up? And somebody beside you say 3 and you say 3 and he's okay, back.
In a nutshell.
Yeah. I remember those days. You're not hurt. Get back out there. Rub a little dirt on it.
Right.
Guys, I opened the show with the concept that it's Aaron Rodgers, it's Tom Brady, but they really aren't the storyline here. If you look at it, both of them have the receivers are in tatters at this point. Is this a game where the defense of the Buccaneers and the defense of the Packers and the run game of the Packers and the run game of the Buccaneers are going to decide who wins this game?
I believe so. I did a 3 keys to victory type of thing, and I mentioned Aaron Rodgers, but it was basically put pressure on him, and that's because their lack of offensive line also. We know it's stop the run was one, and then capitalize on our possessions. But I think this game was bigger than the quarterbacks to football fans, but not to people in the media.
Right, that's true. Chris, what are your thoughts on it?
I agree with James. I mean, you look and neither team has anybody you really want to throw to. I mean, Godwin is out and Julio Jones. Did they determine if he's going to try to play tonight?
I saw it move to questionable, but it still didn't say that he was going to be active and playing. That's the last report I saw pop up on the screen when I was watching the Dolphins and Bills game.
So, I mean, they signed Cole Beasley off the street. And
he's going to be active today. They did say that he will be active.
Yeah, so, I mean, you got a guy that you just signed 4 or 5 days ago, and he's probably de facto your number one receiver outside of Russell Gage. Green Bay, Sammy Watkins is on IR. Lazard hasn't been great. I know Randall Cobb was ill during the week, and they weren't sure if he was going to play. And Green Bay's rookie receivers haven't looked that good. So I think it's going to be a run game kind of thing.
Let me throw a stat at you that blew me away. In his career, Tom Brady has thrown multiple passes to 516 different receivers. So, the fact that you could throw to 516 different people all on your team is pretty amazing to me. The other stat that I thought was interesting is that Aaron Rodgers has a losing record in the state of Florida.
Never knew that one. That is a good little nugget right there. That's news to me for sure.
So I find it interesting that that these kind of little things pop up, and I think that and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong. The way that Brady played in New England, right? They just plug and play. I mean, whoever Josh McDaniels or Belichick or whoever had, it's number 41, you're in the game. Number 25, you're in the game. And it didn't matter because they ran their routes. They did their thing. Brady hit them. I don't think that's I see Aaron Rodgers having more difficulty with not having his guys than I've seen Brady, who has the same situation.
True.
Am I wrong, or what do you guys think?
Well, I mean, if you think about it, Aaron Rodgers, for the longest time, he had, Donald Driver, and then you had, after that, he had Devontae Adams for the last several years, so he didn't have to rely on necessarily his second, third, and fourth guys. But now you traded Adams for whatever reason because you didn't want to pay him. And these other guys haven't stepped up. You saw Watson drop what should have been a touchdown pass against Minnesota on the first play from scrimmage or whatever. Romeo Doubs hasn't been great. Lazard missed the first game, didn't get a ton of action in game 2. And it's tough for Rodgers to adjust because he's always had that de facto number one guy from when he came into the league, as opposed to Brady, who had Welker and Edelman and, like you said, number 41 and, insert name here. Or like when you order the jerseys from NFL shop, it'll say your name here.
Right.
That's basically what it is with Brady, and that's what it's always been.
James, from a defensive standpoint, okay, when you're playing against an elite quarterback, does that get you juiced up more than just? I mean, or am I making too much of it? I mean, it doesn't matter who's quarterbacking. You've got a game plan. You're going to go and you're going to do what you're going to do. Or is it when, okay, I know Aaron Rodgers is playing over there. I'm damn sure not going to lose to him. I'm going to do everything I can to make sure, he doesn't get off my page.
I think your coordinators and your head coach tries to make it more about what your philosophy, their concept of what it's going to take to stop that team. But if I sat up here as a player and told you it didn't matter, like say back in the day when we went to Lambeau to take on Brett Favre, I'd be lying. You want to elevate and step it up against bigger competition. I think it's just natural as an athlete to want to do that. So I believe this Buccaneers defense not needing to make it about Aaron Rodgers, but they want to make it a point to like, look, we're going to shut down who they say is the best quarterback in the league today, and that's what we want to do. And I think that's a natural thing to feel and a natural way to play on the defensive side of the ball.
You know, in the proverbial not wanting to take anything away from someone, and now I'm going to say a statement that probably will take something away from him. You know, Aaron Rodgers is a fantastic regular season quarterback, but his history in the playoffs is abysmal. Am I missing something here? I mean, he's a fantastic guy, but people put him in the same conversations that guys like Manning and others, and I'm like, how?
Well, I mean, he does have a ring. I mean, you can't take that away from him. I mean, granted,
No, I'm not. I'm not trying to.
But I mean, you're right. You look at his postseason record; it's not all that great. You saw last year where they struggled to move the ball against the 49ers in a game where, you know, a blocked punt pretty much determined how that was going to play out. But, I mean, a lot of it is just based on the fact that look who he followed up in Green Bay. He followed up, you know, another icon in Favre, and everybody remembers what he did. So for the last 3 decades, those are the 2 guys you've seen under center.
Right. James, you know, one of the things you got to be happy about is that the Buccaneers are 2-0, and it's been defense. It is not the offense that has taken them to a 2-0, you know, situation. So you got to be happy with the play. Let's talk about those linebackers. I mean, those backers go from sideline to sideline. You don't know where they're coming from.
Yeah, and then when they mix a little bit of blitz in with it as well and send them all over the place, it's amazing. But just to have the leadership of David and Devin White is I love watching them play. And as a defensive lineman, when you know you have guys like that behind you that are not going to, you know, there's no drop off if it gets to the next level.
Right.
They're going to make sure the linemen are in the right place, are lined up correctly, run things the right way. And it speaks volumes for how this defense has been put together and what they can do. But over these first 2 games, these first 2 weeks, that linebacking core has looked awesome.
Well, they lead the conference, or lead the NFC anyway, in sacks. They lead the NFC in yards against rushing. I mean, they're proving that, you know, defense does matter. Now, what about one of the things I think he doesn't get enough credit for is Todd Bowles still runs that defense. And do you think he's being undersold here?
I don't know if that's the right word. I mean, I think they know what Todd Bowles is capable of. I think a lot of people had questions about his decision making with the zero blitz that happened in the playoffs.
Right.
So I did.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think he comes into this season and they asked him, they said, well, why didn't you turn the play calling over to someone else? And he said, well, it was too late in the process to change things now.
Right.
But at the same time, part of me believes that he was on a mission to make a point that he hasn't fallen off from a defensive standpoint, and when given the opportunity to show that he's still capable of doing things, he's going to do it.
Do me a favor. Let's go ahead, Chris. I'm sorry. You're about
I was going to say, I was just looking at the inactives because they've come out now. You won't see Julio Jones or Chris Godwin also inactive for Tampa Bay. Of course, Akeem Hicks, Zion McCollum, Cade Otton, Donovan Smith, and Kyle Trask. David Bakhtiari is going to be active for Green Bay.
Oh.
Just the second time in, the last 2 years, pretty much?
Yeah.
They won't have, Caleb Jones and Sean Ryan, Rasheed Walker, all offensive linemen that are inactive. Christian Watson will not play for Green Bay with a hamstring issue. So they brought up somebody from the practice squad as well. Randall Cobb is active. It'll be interesting to see how much of a factor he is. And Justin Herbert, not to switch games, but Justin Herbert is active for the Chargers, so he's going to try to gut it out.
Okay.
Yep. He's playing. Keenan Allen is out.
Oh, wow.
Oh, and don't forget that Evans can't play because he's suspended.
There's that too. Yep. No truth to the rumor that Mark Carey or was asked to try and suit up for Tampa Bay today.
There have been a few guys that they probably could pull
I don't know
off.
if they contacted Bert Emanuel. James,
Oh,
were
wow.
you there when Bert was there?
Yeah, Bert. My first year in Tampa was when they signed Bert as a free agent from Atlanta.
How about Keyshawn? He was there.
Yeah, I played 2 years with Keyshawn.
Hey, let's give him a call. Maybe we can get down there fast enough. You never know.
I Keyshawn, I know when I watched him on ESPN the other day, Keyshawn looking more like a tight end than a wide receiver nowadays.
you know what happens after the season's over. This is after your career's over. You become very accustomed to the banquet circuit, and it's hard to push that stuff off.
Is Rydell Anthony available?
Oh wow,
we're going way back. Okay.
Yeah, Riddell, what a guy.
But
we could have said Yo Murphy, but
if James, from a defensive standpoint, if they know, meaning the opposing team knows that they have to establish a run game to get the passing game going, how does that put you guys from a defensive standpoint? And do you load the box and say, okay, Erin, beat me with your arm because you don't have anybody to throw it to, or do you don't buy into it as quickly?
No, I think that's one of the ways that happens. I think that it'll be like, hey, we're going to force you to beat us. You know that everyone says you're capable of beating us. Let's see what happens.
Right.
And then to say that, you have to stop, or we know that we have to run the ball to open up our passing game. Mm-hmm. It's easier said than done, especially when you are banged up on the offensive line. And I don't care what anyone says. You may have a few big runs, but the defensive front for Tampa is hard to run the ball against. Mm-hmm. So it plays into our hands. We can walk the Bucs down. Our secondary is good enough to get, the eighth man in the box and still cover when we need to. And I don't think that, I say this, I don't think Green Bay is bold enough to go to like a spread or a 3 wide receiver set and not have that extra protection in for what we can do rushing the passer as well. So I think it all still benefits how we play defense.
Well, I think to your point, the way Bowles has done it is, basically putting, as many guys in the box as possible, and then he rushes the linebacker, and the linebacker ends up getting the sack.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't know where they're coming from, and that's got to be a little disconcerting.
Yeah, it's going to be tough, and it's got to be tough for that offensive coordinator on the other side. The blitz schemes are I like them. We didn't blitz a lot when I played.
Right.
But so seeing the different ways that different coordinators come up with ways to apply pressure, it's kind of cool to see, like, the different kind of twist type blitz and where they can come from. If it's going to be a safety walking down, a corner, it's a lot of creativity that Bowles does use. Just don't go zero blitz in the wrong situation.
Yeah, there you go. What if you were defensive coordinator today against Rodgers? What would be your number 1, 2 things that you want to accomplish?
Stop the run. Stop the 2-hitter running monster of Dillon and Jones.
Right.
And then pressure Aaron Rodgers. And pressure him right up the middle. He doesn't want to get out and run. You flush him. You bring pressure in the middle. You flush him outside that pocket. Guys like Shaq Barrett and Joe Tryon, that fits into them getting that edge if we need it and have to. And I think it vies well for us. But my number 1 thing is stop the run game. Like you said, if it's load the box or whatever else, as a coordinator, I'm thinking we're taking your run game away. You're going to have to throw the ball to beat me.
Right.
How concerning is the loss of Hicks in the middle there with that 2-headed monster of Dillon and Jones, James? How can Bowles and company scheme to replace him?
Well, I think it's who you put it there. Now, are we going to see a heavier dose of Logan Hall, or is it going to be Patrick O'Connor? Who are we going to see, who fills that up? Who can step in and do what Hicks does now? Even when he wasn't making a lot of plays in the first 2 games, or even against the Saints, they still had to try to push him, block him, and other guys, and that's when our linebackers were able to scrape through and make those tackles. So it's interesting to see exactly how you do it, but I'm interested to see if Logan Hall can be a piece that steps in there, and let's see what he's going to be able to do to help us out.
I think one of the things that is going to be helpful is the fact that this is a Buccaneers' first home game. I mean, they've been on the road the first 2 weeks,
Right.
and they get to play at home. It's going to be hot. It's going to be muggy, and if that's what you're playing, if you're playing a run game, there's going to be some really tired guys when you get to
Right.
that late third, early part of the fourth quarter, where they're going to be sucking up that heat because that humidity. There's no way you're going to replicate that in Green Bay. It just ain't going to happen.
Right.
So I think that may have a factor. One thing, James, and this is because you and I are old enough to do this. When I started doing this in 1976, I could not tell you how many times I thought that I had frozen to death going to Detroit, Green Bay, and Chicago. It's like, what travel agent put this horrible show together? And that's, I mean, that was before the Minneapolis, before the Metrodome. That was before, the damn new building in Detroit.
But you had the Silver Dome, didn't you?
No, I didn't. Not the first couple years. So, I mean, I was back there. When the Purple People Eaters back in the day, they used to play at the old stadium out where the Mall of America is now in Minneapolis.
Oh, wow.
And both teams were on the same sideline.
Jim, I'm not that old though.
Yeah, I know. I said that.
I was going to say, James is only about a year older than I am. So
I was like, when you said you started in '76, I was like, I was like 1 year old then.
I'm old, James. Okay, I'm old. I admit it. But I'm just saying.
He's so old he owes Moses $1.
Yeah, exactly.
Man.
Jim actually broadcast when Moses was part of the Red Sea.
Right, I was there. I just missed it. But no, those old stadiums are. I'm happy they're gone. But that old Central, or what Chris Berman used to call the Norris Division of the NFL. I couldn't be happier to see that gone.
Yeah, I'm so unfair. When I came in, we're in the Central. I'm like, dude, how did we draw that straw to have to go? And I tell that story all the time. My students and players always go, Coach, what's the worst game you ever played in? I was like, Christmas Eve, Green Bay, Wisconsin, Lambeau Field.
Yeah.
Once the second half came, the sun started going down, and that big overcast shadow covered most of the field.
Mm-hmm.
I think they said it felt like -8 with the wind chill that day.
Right.
But it was like bone chilling cold. And I just remember being on kickoff return, and I go to get a block, and I forget who the linebacker was that ran smack dab into me. I ran to the sideline and said, "It's like, what's wrong with you?" I said, "I think my face fell off." I said, "My face was broken." We collided so hard in the middle of the field, I just felt like a crack went right down the middle of my head. And I was like, I can't feel the whole left side of my face. I think it's on the field. And it's just the guys, the trainers, everybody was cracking up on the sideline. But it was like, if you would go stand in front of like the jet heater to get warm real quick, but then as soon as you step away and get back on the field, like your feet and your toes are just numb again. Your hands, you're just like.
And you would go, I strongly recommend that people go and look up, there's, God love him, Steve Sable had a wonderful bit about the old county stadium in Minneapolis where the Vikings played, and Carl Eller used the wind started to come through, and you could hear that wind when it went past the scoreboard, because that was kind of an open-ish, not exactly open, but open-ish area over the scoreboard, and the wind as it got later would get worse. And I mean, like James is saying, you could feel it, and guys like Alan Page and the great Purple People Eater guys would sit there and go, Odin, and Odin was the god of wind from the Nordic. It's the Nordic god of wind, and they're going Odin, and the other teams are going like, what the hell is he talking about? And he would say, the wind is on our side. The wind is on our side. And it's like he's possessed. But thank God they don't have that anymore. That was the Odin days. Again, I'm old. I can say that.
So you never got to go to. You never went to Rich Stadium in December and January, Jim?
I didn't. No, yeah, I was there. I left toes there.
I mean, you and I talked about when we talked about Paul McGuire, the 92 divisional game where Marv Albert comes out at the beginning talking about how the temperature is a balmy 0 and it feels like 25 below and it snowed 28 of the last 29 days. And you've got Jeff Jager coming out to kick a field goal and it's like, I don't know, a 35-yarder. And it comes up like 12 yards short. And Paul McGuire's sitting there talking about, he comes out there to kick it. It's like kicking a brick.
Well, it's true, but and James, I know you were there. To me, even though you're right, Green Bay was cold, Minneapolis was cold. Soldier Field, I swear to God, I never went to a place that you walked out of the bus and you were ready to get back on the bus. It's are you nuts?
Being where it's located in the water and that wind blows, and it was like. I played in Soldier Field before the remodel to kind of help take away some of the elements of the wind. But it was like we played there like New Year's Day. Like, the whole Y2K thing. We're all worried about, everything shutting down and
the world coming to an end.
Yeah, you walk around the city, like you all bundled up. And as soon as game time came, it was just like, teeth chattering and you walk around. And I remember 1 year going to Chicago, Brad Culpepper was like, "Hey man, no sleeves today," and I'm thinking to myself like, "We from Florida, no sleeves. All right, cool." And I'm thinking, no sleeves. We out there, we're warming up, and I'm running around. And I know as soon as we went back in, I went to Darren Kearns, our equipment guy. I was like, "Hey man, give me 2 pairs of sleeves and a little face shield to pull up over my face. I can't do this."
It's crazy. I mean, it's absolutely crazy. You play in those cold weather areas, and I don't care what anybody says, okay? It is just, it's not right. I mean, you're when Bud, oh man, why am I blanking on his name? The coach of the Vikings at the time, Bud Grant. When Bud Grant, used to not allow on his side of the field any of those heaters. And you're like, okay, fair enough. Well, the Buccaneers went 2 years without winning a game where the temperature was under 46 degrees.
Yeah.
So that was tough. So you want to get them down there. And, when 2 years ago, when the Buccaneers did go and win the Super Bowl, does this kind of remind you a little bit of that time? Because the defense got ahead of the offense. Brady hadn't had a chance, and that was due to COVID, to really get a chance to bring any timing and get any timing with his receivers. So that was kind of a mess. But the defense kept him in every game, and the defense, again, won that game when the Packers came to town to play them in the first year. So we got Carter Brantley, who's out at the stadium, and Carter's going to bring us up to date on what's going on over at Raymond James. And so without any further ado, Carter, how you doing, buddy?
Hey, I'm doing all right. How are you fellas doing? Can you hear me okay?
Fine. We can hear you fine, Carter. So what's going on at the stadium?
People are starting to file in. We're starting to get close to game time. The press box is great. Nothing beats some free food and some AC while watching a good football game. But how are you fellas doing? How's the show going so far?
The show's going well. We were waxing about some of the storylines here, being that this is really not necessarily a Brady versus Rodgers game, but more of a Buccaneers defense versus the run versus the Green Bay Packers against the run.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Especially, I don't know if y'all have already discussed this, but with Julio Jones being out, now they're down to the bare bones of that wide receiver group. So yeah, it's definitely going to be a lot less pass heavy than you'd think, thinking of a Rodgers Brady matchup, which is a bit of a bummer because I was looking forward to seeing some, high flying offenses, especially with the two legends. But you get what you can. Beggars can't be choosers.
That's true. Carter, one quick other question before I open the floor to the guys, and that is, what's the elements like over there? What's the heat? Is it hot? Is it muggy? What's it like at the stadium?
Walking in, it was brutal. I mean, it's Florida. It's humid.
Yeah, I know.
It's hot. It's it's tough. But the Bucs will be fine. But yeah, the Packers. I mean, I've been watching this Bills-Dolphins game, and man, these Bills players look hot, out of breath. Just not dealing well with the Florida weather. And then the Dolphins players are like, "Oh, it's fall. It's September. It's not even that bad." So so it's definitely interesting. It'll be interesting to see how the heat affects both sides, especially with it being a 4 o'clock game. Hopefully, it'll start to cool down a little bit because I got to walk to my car. But you know how it be sometimes.
Yeah, that's we don't want you to pull a hamstring walking in your car, Carter.
Right.
Or get cramped up.
For sure.
Guys,
For sure.
any questions for Carter, who's at Raymond James at the moment?
What does it look like in the pregame right now? Does Green Bay look like a team that the weather will break down by the time we get to the fourth quarter, or can you even tell that by looking at pregame?
Honestly, it's hard to tell with pregame. Guys are kind of just going through the motions. Maybe closer to game time, we'll be a little bit more able to tell, kind of thing. But yeah, for right now, everyone just seems to be kind of getting loose, just trying to not pass out before the game even starts. It's everyone's just kind of relaxing, going through the stretches, just trying to get their bodies a little warm, just a little less tight. But yeah, so far it's hard to tell, but we'll definitely see because they got some real talent on that defense, but they're used to playing in that Lambeau Field weather where it's either 70 degrees or lower or it's freezing. So it's definitely going to be interesting.
Well, you can set yourself up for the heat. You just can't set yourself up for the humidity.
Right. Yeah. It's tough to really. It's really tough to kind of simulate that kind of thing, especially with Florida. Yeah. It's definitely tough.
Any questions, guys? Are there any other questions you want to talk to about Carter out at the stadium? Carter, one last question because I know you're going to get ready to get going here, and I appreciate you dropping by.
Heck yeah.
Carter, with regard to the game today, is this a situation where you've got the fans are the fans gonna really be in it serious big time because it is the first home game? I mean, you can tell the moment you hit the parking lot whether the fans are jacked up and ready to go.
Oh yeah, I mean it's a Bucs game with Tom Brady in a Bucs uniform, and all these games that I've been to, at least they've been revved up and ready to go just because Tom Brady's here. I mean, it's tough not to. But yeah, the Packers fans are showing out. You know how it is. There seem to be Green Bay Packers fans. Oh, for sure, they travel real well, despite the fact that there's like 4 people that actually live in Green Bay, Wisconsin. But I digress. But yeah, it's real fun. It's a really great atmosphere. The fans are revved up, ready to go. It's opening day or the first home game. It's against the Packers, which is a huge matchup. And it's with Aaron Rodgers, and Aaron Rodgers versus Tom Brady. You really can't beat that. Those are two of the greatest quarterbacks ever. So it's obviously wonderful to see. So the fans are definitely revved up and ready to go. Okay,
Carter, it's shameless plug time. Tell people where they can follow you on Twitter, where they can read your stuff, and anything and everything you want us to know.
Heck yeah. I appreciate my Twitter username, CTBrantley12, if you're looking for me there. I cover the Bucs for Creative Loafing as well, an all-weekly newspaper. You can check me out there. You can also check me out on Bucs Report. You know how it is. Gotta plug that. So I appreciate y'all for having me on. Let's hope that the Bucs can steal victory here from Rodgers.
Well, promise this won't be the last time. We'll harass you and harangue you for the rest of your life. So you're gonna be
Heck yeah, that sounds great, brother. All right, thank y'all. Hope y'all have a
Carter,
good day.
thanks a lot, buddy.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Have a good one, Carter.
Okay. Carter Brantley from Creative Loafing in from the Bucs Report at Raymond James Stadium. And boys, I'll tell you what. Let me take a second and pop in the scoreboard because there's some crazy things going on, and let's keep track of it. So let's start with the Saints and the Panthers. The Panthers are up 19-7 on the Saints.
Crazy score.
What a terrible game that is.
The Texans and the Bears in the one of those games where only the family and friends are there. It's 20-20.
I'm sorry.
Right. Chiefs. The Chiefs are only 4 points ahead of the Colts as we're moving into the fourth quarter. Bills and Dolphins. Bills 17, Dolphins 14 in that ball game. You got the Lions 24. Hello, Lions 14 for the Vikings. You got the Ravens 31, the Patriots 26 in a defense optional game. You've got the Bengals just crushing the Jets. But as we all know, the Jets don't score until the last 90 seconds of the game. 27-9. You've got the Raiders getting crushed by the Titans 24-13. You got the Eagles 24. The Commanders scored on a safety, I guess, 24-2. And let's see, everything else is later. So that's
the Commanders had 4th and goal at the 1 and threw a pass for no yards, and then Boston Scott got tackled for a safety.
Well, Carson's gone and Wentz. So there you go. So
like you said, they'll score in the 4th quarter now for Washington, because what else do they have to lose? They're already down by 3 touchdowns.
Well, and then you got like Joe Flacco last week, suddenly scores, they scored 3 touchdowns in like a little over 2 minutes.
Something like that.
Win that game.
Yeah.
So,
it's crazy.
It's nuts. But I think all of the folks were focusing on that game between the Dolphins and, of course, Buffalo. So that's a close game, and it looks like it's going to go down to the last series or so in that game. Looking around the league, guys, we just gave the scores. Any surprises?
Man, I have a couple. Well, I'm surprised. The Dolphins just scored a field goal.
Okay.
I was going to say I'm surprised at the Bills-Dolphins games, the way the Bills been playing. But then again, a short week and the Florida weather, I didn't really think about it until Carter mentioned just what it felt like up in Tampa. So I imagine down in Miami it's a little bit worse. That one got me. And then I thought the Raiders were going to be a better football team, guys. Is it just me? I really thought that it was going to be something different. And 24-13, about to probably go 0-3. I can't believe it.
What about James and Chris? I'll ask you both the same question. They made the playoffs with a coaching staff that the team loved. They would run through a wall. Then all of a sudden, they decide we need to go hire Josh McDaniels. I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute. John Gruden in the middle of the season gets suspended and leaves. Okay, this coaching staff comes in and puts them in the playoffs, and you're not rewarding any of them. You're going out and getting another guy. How is this going to work? And it doesn't seem like it's worked at all.
Well, that's the way the Raiders are, though. I mean, that's what Al Davis did when he was there. If he didn't like the way something went, he fired people, or he traded quarterbacks. That's why you saw Darryl LaMonica going all the way back to then, and then you had Stabler and all that.
Oh, wow.
But Mark Davis is a chip off the old block. I didn't think McDaniels was the right hire. He didn't show he could coach in Denver. And I know a lot of people say that was because of Tebow, but McDaniels thrives when he has somebody else that's a strong leader, and that's why he thrived with Belichick. But you notice when he's been on his own, it's kind of like when Ringo Starr went out and tried to be a solo artist.
Yeah, I pumped the brakes on McDaniels a long time ago. Just when you commit to the Colts and then all of a sudden have a change of heart, it tells me a lot about you, I think, as a person. How are you going to lead if you don't even know what you really want to do? And like Chris just said, he felt so much more comfortable when he went back to Daddy Bill opposed to doing it on his own. Can he really even get it done on his own? The roster looked like they had the right pieces in place. They added other things. When they added Chandler Jones on defense, you're thinking, oh, my God, the Raiders have gotten better. This is going to be good to see. You go get Adams and Carr. I watched part of that game. I'm downstairs flipping. I'm like, this is just looking bad all the way around. Like nothing. There's nothing good going on in that game, and I think that really caught me by surprise. I thought it'd be different.
James, let me ask you. You've played with a bunch of different coordinators and a lot of different position coaches. There are some guys who I one time talked to Monty Kiffin, and I said, do you want to be an NFL head coach? And he goes, oh, hell no. Because, I like being a defensive coordinator. And he says, I also don't like, having too many people wanting, my time. And it looks like to me, like, Josh McDaniels is obviously, we just talked about him, but he's not the only one. There have been a bunch of guys who have been, elevated from coordinator to head coach. And the moment you see them start to have some issues, that maybe when they leave, when they get fired, they go back and become a position coach or a defensive coordinator, offensive coordinator, and they're fine. Right. But they just aren't made for that. Is it when you're dealing with your different position coaches and your different coordinators? As a player, do you know which guys you say to yourself, this guy's going to be a head coach because he's got that kind of mentality, and the other guys are just very good at what they do?
Yeah, I think honestly, and I think back to about the 1 year I was with Mike Tomlin, I was like, man, he's going to be awesome one day, somewhere to be a leader. You saw it in him, and just the way he came to the meeting room and the way he approached, the way he dealt with his guys. And then some coordinators, like you see, they're gonna tell you, man, I don't want to do that. Hey, I'm good where I'm at. They thrive where they are. They don't want to be in the limelight of being the head of the face of the organization as the head coach.
Sure.
And then, but at the same time, I never fault the coaches that want to take that chance and seeing if that's where they're going to thrive at. I think in anything you do in life, if you should have a desire to go as high as you can to see if you're qualified to do it. And some guys know their lanes more than others. Like I would get people all the time to tell me, "Hey man, you never thought about coaching college?" I was like, "I love my family. I like seeing them. I don't want to wake up when my kids are asleep when they were younger, and come home and they're still asleep. Like I miss an entire day of my kids' life because of what I have to put in.
Right.
Now, would I be dedicated enough to do it if I had to? Yes, but it's not what I wanted in my life for me. Sure. And I think there's coaches like that in the NFL in position roles that are like, I don't want to. That's not what I want. And I think as players, you see some of your coaches and the way they touch you. You like, man, I pray that he gets the shot to be a head coach one day because of how he motivates and leads. And I'm not gonna lie to you, I felt bad when Rinaldi had the years he did in Detroit, and never really got a shot again because to me he was a master motivator at least. And I've talked to guys way younger than me that played for him. It's like, oh, you played in the league, Rod? I said, yeah, I played for Rod. I said, oh my God, this dude here. I said, did he tell you about the run through the wall and all that? He said, yeah, he still says that. And I was like, yeah. I said, story hadn't changed. I said, he's a great guy. And the guys who had him with on the Raiders staff last year loved him to death. And it was always one of those things where I was like, dang, I hope Rinaldi can get another head coaching job one day.
Right. One of the things that I think is overlooked too, and this is something that you just mentioned, Mike. I love Mike. Mike is, I've known Mike for, Lord, 30 years.
Okay.
And I think a lot of people do, you talk about coaching trees, right? Very few people talk about the Dungy coaching tree. And man, if you look at that coaching tree, it's a pretty impressive group of people.
Yeah, and Caldwell got hosed. He never got fired in Detroit. I don't think. I mean, he had him competing and getting to the playoffs when he was there, and to not have another job again. But Dungy's tree was pretty well represented. And then I didn't even realize that Alan Williams was the defensive coordinator for the Bears, and he started out as a quality control coach in Tampa, and then defensive backs coach in Indianapolis under Coach Dungy.
Right, and one of the things I remember talking to Marty Schottenheimer, the late Marty Schottenheimer, at one point, and I talking about Bill Cowher because he had Bill, on as an assistant, and I said, when did you know that Cowher was going to become a head coach? And he goes, when he kept telling me 5 or 6 times a game that he was going to be a head coach. He said, I knew then Bill was going to be a head coach. And it's just a different mindset. You have to be willing to put in the CEO type stuff because you're not going to be able to walk over. And I think that's where people don't understand the importance of position coaches and coordinators because they are the guys who get them ready. And the head coach oversees all of it, but isn't in every meeting talking to every player.
Right.
Well, wasn't that the issue with Dick Vermeil when he was coaching with the Eagles? He finally realized that he didn't want to be, like James said, you don't want to go and leave when your kids are sleeping and come back when your kids are sleeping because he was sleeping in the office and he'd go in on Tuesday and you wouldn't see him until Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Well, there's guys who do that, and then there's guys who are successful that don't. I mean, Joe Gibbs. I know Joe. He didn't. He put in the time. Don't get me wrong, and he was obviously successful at what he did. But he didn't. He wasn't one of those guys that slept on the couch and woke up at 3:00 in the morning still doing film.
See, I saw that. I remember walking into One Buck Place and Monty Kiffin getting off the couch looking like an episode of Scrooge or something. Like, Monty, go to bed, brush your hair, brush your teeth, do something. But that's how dedicated he was. He put the work in, and I admired him for it. Yeah. But at the same time, I'm like, this is just crazy. Like, you didn't go home at all last night? Like, wow. And it happens. And I always tell a story, guys, about, and this is what I learned from, one of the things I learned from Coach Dungy is, everyone talks about the kind of man Coach Dungy is. And I'm like, yes, everything he says to the T, like his faith, his belief, his family first, not swearing, not cursing. But at the same time, Tony knew how to hire the right people around him that can get what they needed to out of the players that he had on his team. He knew how to get guys like Marinelli that could motivate, Herman Edwards before it moved on to Mike Tomlin, Lovie Smith, guys that would get into you and light into you, and all of a sudden just like, God, they got more. They got a lot of bite. And not like Tony, but it's different. But that's what a good coach does. Yeah. He puts together the proper staff that can get the things done within the within that locker room to get every guy to maximize their talent on the field. So
Chris Cole says, is it time to the Saints bench Jameis Winston? If I'm not mistaken, the guy that would take his place is Andy Dalton, right?
Yep.
Yes.
Is it time that Andy Dalton get the keys to the house, or what? No. Now, Jameis has got four injuries in his back, 4 vertebrae issues.
Yeah, it's like 2 hairline fractures or something in his vertebrae going on. The stat line, I wonder what the game was looking like. It's 22. He's 22 of 37, 263 yards passing, 1 interception. But to me, you've given up 22 points to the Panthers. Right. What is up with that Saints defense that we thought was going to be okay?
It seems to. We looked at it a little bit last week, right? And they were kind of a bend but no break group. Evidently, they're breaking a lot this week because it's definitely not.
But let's not overlook the fact that Carolina's first touchdown did come on a defensive score when Kamara fumbled the ball.
True that. They did scoop and score. You're correct. You're right. They did get a scoop and score.
So, and then you look in, the Saints have had basically one good drive the whole day. That's not really going to get it done. Right. They gave up a 67-yard touchdown pass here in the fourth quarter, right after they scored. So that was great. You go 89 yards to get on the board and make it a 6-point game, and you give a 67-yard score to Laviska Shenault.
Well, that goes back to the quarterbacks get all the praise and they get all the blame. The old joke about the most popular player on an NFL team is the backup quarterback, the guy that stands there holding the clipboard waiting for his chance. I don't, look, I said last week I thought Jameis was a fine athlete and someone who could play under the right circumstances as a team head, as a quarterback on an NFL team. I mean, we know Andy Dalton can. He's played for everybody. But does Andy Dalton add 3, 4, 5 more wins to your team? I don't see it.
Not this Andy Dalton. No. Maybe the Andy Dalton was maybe 5 years ago, but
the
now
Bengals Andy Dalton maybe. Yeah.
Right? Yeah, and not even the Cowboys backup Andy Dalton.
No. It's just one of those crazy things.
And the problem with Winston is, like we said last week when we were talking about it, we talked about how if anybody was going to be able to exploit him, it was Tampa Bay with their familiarity with him. But the question, that comes down to with Winston is, how much can he contribute with all those injuries? I mean, we saw it with Stafford in Detroit. Mm-hmm. And, before he decided eventually that he reached his breaking point and had surgery. If that happens, will he get another contract or will people shy away from him because of the injuries?
Well, that's where you work your way back. right? And there have been a lot of players who've done that, who have gone off and had the injuries taken care of and surgery, and everybody's kind of like, well, do we take a chance? Well, there's always a coach out there that feels like, you know what, I'm willing to give this guy a shot. I'm surprised, to be honest, and maybe you guys can tell me otherwise. I'm surprised that Jameis didn't take the deal when Mike Tomlin offered it to him as basically the heir apparent to Roethlisberger in Pittsburgh. I mean, I thought that was the perfect match for him. For him to get with Sean in New Orleans and basically sit there and be involved in that setup, I just thought the way the Steelers run the organization, and they have patience and they don't rush people. I thought that would have been a better circumstance for Jameis than going to New Orleans, but I'm not his agent.
You weren't consulted about this?
No. Mike didn't call me. Jameis didn't call me. Nobody. They lost my phone number. It's here, folks. See, there's the phone still here. But
maybe they just forgot to put you in the memo list.
Evidently, I missed that memo. But I just thought, signing with the right team at the right time is such an important part of how you're going to show that quote unquote second act. If somebody's given up on you, and it's Bruce Arians, who's a coach who's known to be the quarterback whisperer. If Bruce has given up on you, and a guy like a Mike Tomlin says, "Come to us, let us work with you." I had great respect for obviously Mike, but I also had great respect for Sean and the team that he puts together. But at the end of the day, I mean, come on, guys, where you got to put yourself in a position where you could win, and I think Jameis would have been far better off backing up Roethlisberger in Pittsburgh than playing with the Saints.
I think him coming. Well, I thought it was going to be a little bit better coming in, but not being in a rush the first year because they still had Drew Brees.
Sure,
learn something under a little bit more stability in your coordinator room than what you had prior to Arians. I thought it would play out a little bit better. He's lost weight. They thought he looked okay early. I don't know. I didn't think that the Saints deal was a bad deal for Jameis. Like I said, it's hard. Your first 5 years in the league and every coordinator you had was different. 4 different coordinators in 5 years. That's tough, man.
Yeah, but here's my theory of the case, James. Okay, and just because you're not wrong, you're absolutely not wrong. But what I'm thinking of is, all right, get me to another conference, get me out of the same. I mean, everybody that Jameis, when he went to the Saints, everybody in the same division has a book on him.
True.
I got Falcons had it. Carolina has it on him. Tampa sure as hell has it on him. Right. So why don't, if you're going to start an over, go to the next conference, go to someplace where it's all stable. It's no drama. Trust me, it is no drama with Mike Tomlin. There's no such thing as drama with Mike Tomlin. And I just thought that was it. Now to go back, like you said, look, Sean Payton is a master. Drew Brees is a fantastic, Hall of Famer. He'll be there in 4 years from now. So no, you're not wrong. I'm just thinking, but I'm in the same division with the team that gave up on me.
Right.
With 3 other squads, including the one I'm on, who has more tape on me than anybody else on the planet.
That's a good point, Jim.
So basically the Mitch Trubisky syndrome where he left the Bears and played for a year in Buffalo, and then now he's starting in Pittsburgh for how long, we don't know. But basically the same kind of mentality.
Till Kenny Pickett can get his jersey on tight, because I'm pretty sure, guys, that Mitch may not make it to this next the 4th game of the season. I think that it might just be Kenny Pickett time. I don't know, but we'll find out on that one.
It's something's going to happen here soon. I think they give him one more start and one more week to see what's going to happen. But it's going to be a change made very soon in Pittsburgh.
I wonder, will we see Malik Willis starting sooner than later if Tennessee,
I had that same
thought. Now,
I had that same thought. I'm glad you said that, because I was like, if Tennessee loses today to the Raiders, is it time for Tannehill to go and Malik Willis get a shot? I thought the exact same thing.
Well, that kid, again, we've all seen him in the preseason, but that kid can play. I mean, he's fun to watch.
Yeah,
he's
and I
not
know
a
they
big.
give him a lot of
not-
high praise, like you said,
Yeah.
Jim, during the preseason. He got
Mm.
a gang of praise, and not just from his coaching staff.
Oh no, other
but
teams,
his teammates and other
Yeah,
teams too.
right.
Yeah.
So
And speaking of the Raiders, they just picked up a 4th and 15. They're now at the Tennessee 25-yard line, down by 8 at the 2-minute warning.
Uh-oh.
Okay, before we get out of here, guys, we'll go back to the scoreboard real quick, just to make sure that everybody knows what's going on, because we have people out there who probably have spent a little time with their with BetMGM or Caesar Sportsbook, and so let's bring them in, and then we'll have some final thoughts. Okay, here's our scoreboard for right now, and that is the Saints are still down to the Panthers 22-14. You got the Texans and the Bears still tied with a minute left to go in that game.
Uh-oh.
Chiefs still up on the Colts by a score of 17-13. There's only 2 minutes and 30 seconds left in that one.
Chiefs would be fine if they had a field goal kicker, because they've missed an extra point. They missed a field goal. They had a botched snap on another field goal. They had Indianapolis ready to punt, and then they got called for a personal foul for unsportsmanlike conduct on 3rd down.
Oh my goodness!
So
the
Colts now in Kansas City territory at the 39.
The Bills are in the red zone, losing at the moment 21-17 to the Dolphins. The Lions, how about those boys? 24, Vikings 21. The Ravens, with 3 minutes and change to go, the Ravens are in the red zone, leading 31-26 over the Patriots.
They just scored.
Ravens just scored, yeah.
Okay, well, you guys are faster than I'm just reading off of a sheet here, boys. The Bengals 27, the Jets 12. Yeah, you guys are doing red zone. I'm doing a sheet of paper. Okay, great. Anyway, the Titans are up 24-16, unless you guys have a better score.
No, they're at the 2-minute warning. So
okay, and the Commanders still have 2 points. The Eagles 24.
It's one of those days where I wish I had started the Eagles defense and fantasy, because they've got, I think, roughly 400 sacks.
Right.
They've got 8, according to this, for all we know. There's number 9. Never mind.
Does that count 3 cheerleaders? What, I mean, have they tackled everybody in the stands? What's going on there?
They might as well. I mean, I think they tackled a hot dog vendor.
Yeah. We got a couple quick minutes, guys. Are the Eagles the best team in the not just the AFC, NFCs? Are they the best team in the NFL at the moment? NFC in the moment?
No, I don't believe it.
I'm just
not yet. I mean, I think they're doing well. And my co-host and I on our show had a big debate about that yesterday. And I told him, he's a Cowboys fan, and I was like, dude, the Eagles are going to dominate your division this year.
Yeah.
That's not hard to do, but they're going to do it. I definitely think the best team in the NFC East, but the rest of the NFC, maybe it's not far off, Jim. Maybe they're close to being, because I believe the NFC is still up to grabs to most of those division, most of those top division teams.
I think too, guys, that I look at the season in 4 games, at a time. First 4, second 4, and so on. You can be the best team for the first 4 games of the season and still not make the playoffs.
Right.
So, are they the best in the NFC? Maybe for this week, but call me again in 6 weeks and we'll figure it out. But anyway, final thoughts, guys, before we get out of here on today's game. We'll give Chris, and then we'll let the last word go to Mr. Big Game James. So, Chris, final thoughts on the game today.
I'm not expecting a ton of offensive fireworks in this game. I think what you saw last week with New Orleans is probably what you're going to get this week. You're going to see a lot of hard hitting, a lot of defense, a lot of trying to move the ball on the ground. Neither team has much in the way of receivers they can rely on. In the end, I think the weather and Tampa Bay's defense is going to be the deciding factors, and the Bucs are going to win a close game. I don't know if either team gets to more than 21 points. I'm going to say 21-17.
Man, Hey, Chris, that's a good one because I've been so wrong the last 2 weeks with my point predictions. I think I said 24 last week and ended up being 20. But in the back of my mind, I keep thinking Brady is going to click somewhere soon. Like it's going to happen. But then the receiving core and Evans is going. So, like you said, there's not a lot there. I think it's going to be a low scoring drag out game. A lot of people on ESPN didn't give us a chance today, even at home, which I think is crazy. I think we win this game, but I'm looking at like a 17-10 kind of game.
I like 17-10, and I like the fact that whenever the folks at ESPN pick you, that's the perfect time to say, okay, we got to win here today.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Jim, not to interrupt, the Colts just scored with 24 seconds left, so they now lead 20-17 over the Chiefs. Kansas City has no one to blame for losing this game but themselves.
True.
Well,
very true.
There you go, boys and girls.
Very true.
A quick happy and a healthy New Year to all of you out there as the Jewish holidays begin tonight. And I hope that you all, Chris and you, James, have a wonderful and happy and healthy New Year. And we will be back next time because if it's prior to a Bucs game, who else would you want to talk to? All right, guys.
As Marv Levy used to say, where would you rather be than right here, right now?
There you go. Guys, have a great day. Fans, enjoy the game. And the post-game show is up right after, the game, about 10 minutes. So check it out at Bucs Report. Check all of our content out at Sports Talk Florida and Bucs Report. Gentlemen, for Chris King, for Big Game James Canada, I'm Jim Williams saying have a wonderful and safe Sunday. Go Bucs.
Go Bucs.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.